Thank you. Apologies. It's great to have you with us, Maria. Please do make yourself very comfortable. We also have Philippe List, who is direct. We focused a lot in our last panel on challenges, but we heard from Montserrat Martinez Pereira right at the beginning. She said, you know, so many efforts have gone into this, so many initiatives, and yet, and I'm quoting, the results are not as good as they should be, and we have a long way to go. And Peter talked about how indispensable, Peter Simon said at the beginning, how indispensable initiatives to tackle this are. And Marcel, I just want to get a sense from you of why you think this is such an uphill struggle. I think Roland referred to it as such in the last panel, and the challenges that we need to address, and then we'll focus on solutions.
Yeah, I think we all agree on the importance of the
Push it up if it's not up. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I think we all agree on the analysis and the importance of the issue, but it is very hard to find solutions. And the EU level, the European contribution is even more challenging because the EU has very limited competences in the field of education. So the EU cannot regulate. The EU cannot regulate. The EU cannot develop a binding framework. So let's not forget that the framework that the OECD has developed together with the Commission is a voluntary framework. So we depend on the member states to take this up, and what makes it even more complicated is that in a number of member states, it's not the central government that is in charge of education, but it is regional government. It's regional government, and also local government has a role to play. So we are looking at a very complex institutional and legal arrangement, which set up that makes it so very challenging to first of all develop solutions, and then also to implement them. And that's what I think that is seen from a European level. That's what we are struggling with. So I mean, maybe we can talk about what can be done, but let me say only one thing at this point, and that is we need all stakeholders to get on board for this. Otherwise, it does not work, and it will not be possible to make progress.
Thank you very much. And we talked in the first panel about somebody called it a coalition, an ecosystem of partners. How do we do that? How does it work? I'd be really interested to get your views on that later. But Maria, from your perspective, the challenge we face and why this is so difficult. Marcel pointing to an institutional challenge, if you like, a fragmentation, so many levels of government involved. But from a bank perspective, how do you see the challenge?
Hi, and thank you for the question and for inviting me. It's working. Yeah.
Is it?
No.
Push up.
Yeah.
It's working.
That's working.
Yeah. Thank you. I want just to mention that in Italy, October is the Financial Education Month. So it's a huge opportunity for everybody to be more aware of financial education. There are a lot of initiatives going on, more than 800 initiatives run by authorities, by private entities. And we also have a very active financial education committee that is built by 10 members, authorities, ministries, and also consumers association, and also financial advisors. They are within this committee. Going back to the challenges and how to engage, especially young people. Okay, being engaging is always a challenge when we speak, also to you, also to adults. And from our experience, it is very useful to use storytelling, telling stories that have characters that are very similar to the people we are speaking to. So young people, if we speak to young people, or older people, if we speak to maybe students, older students, if you speak to students, because when we tell a story, we help the kids to identify themselves in the characters, and so they learn how to behave, and not just knowledge, also more behavior. And this is very effective. And another thing that I wanted to point out is that I think that young people are very keen to find answer to their problems. So they Google what they want to know, and we have to be very good in give an answer that is to the point of what they ask, but also help them to take one step back and try to understand the context in which they move, and to understand the basics, as we said before. So we have to grasp their curiosity and be so good to be able to deliver a more comprehensive message.
Thank you very much indeed. And Philip List, from your perspective, and Peter Simon said right at the beginning, you know, this is a central part of our DNA, this focus on financial education, on literacy. Why do you think we're struggling to address this? Why? We heard earlier Eurobarometer surveys, analysis that have been done of levels of literacy, and some of the numbers are frankly quite alarming. Why are we struggling? What's the challenge?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here. Maria just gave probably 50% of what I wanted to say about storytelling and so on and so forth. This is a very, very important part in reaching young people. I would add that it's also very important to communicate without creating fear, and to use time periods, time frames, which are comprehensible for young people. To under brackets, threaten a 14-year-old that if he doesn't start saving, that he might not have a pension, is simply not graspable for a 14-year-old. You have to come with different examples that he can relate to. Relating to or information that he can digest, in the sense, has to be in our flip ways, so to say, like we are doing. It has to be bold, it has to be very playful, and yeah, simple. And simple is very difficult if it comes to financial matters.
Absolutely. So a question later on, if it's not, as you say, timeframes that are comprehensible and it's not about fear, what does work? But we'll come back on all of that later. Noemi, complete the picture for me, if you would, in terms of how you see the challenge, why we are struggling with this.
Yes.
It's on, it should be on.
It works, yeah. Thank you. Yes, of course, then some of the topics have already been raised. I'm coming at the end, obviously, but I just wanted, before answering, it's quite important for me to clarify that as European Banking Authority, we are not launching on our own financial education initiatives, but we have a mandate to coordinate. So that's why also what I will explain today is very much referring to the national competent authorities initiatives. And of course, we have the full picture at European level, luckily. And here what we have noticed is like digitalizations will bring a lot of opportunities, that's very clear. But of course, it's also about risk. And as mentioned, we should not create fear, but it's important to be able to identify the needs of the youths and to know also the best way to communicate with them. So the best channel, and what we have noticed is like a multi-channel approach seems to work better. but also to look at the impact that it may have. And that's what the challenges that national competent authorities are facing, I would say, and probably other actors as well. And what we have noticed also in the recent initiative launched by national competent authorities, and I invite you to refer to the report we have published at the beginning of the year about digitalization, cybersecurity, fraud and scams, where there's like clear initiatives mentioned, good practices as well. Here we also see that clearly national competent authorities have to be innovative in the way they launch their financial education campaign. And now it's not so much anymore about traditional tools, but it's very much about websites, social media, and clearly the big component of communicating with youth is social media, like short messages, also to maybe in some cases partner with some YouTubers, also create videos on TikTok. So those are examples, of course, I would have the opportunity to develop, but that's very much the approach. Short messages attract their attention. It's quite a big challenge, I would say, and let them be aware of the risk without being too dramatic.
And that point about social media, because we tend to focus on the risks that social media or digital tools are presenting, but also a huge opportunity, as you say. I'm really interested in this, don't be too dramatic, don't be fearful, Philip. If we don't say, I mean, when you say don't drive it by fear, how do you communicate risk without instilling some fear of the consequences if you don't understand those risks? So if you're going to engage with people, say, well, you need to know this to make sound financial decisions, because if you don't, and I'm just wondering, did you mean that you don't do the second part of that, i.e. if you don't do this? Just on that point from you, Philip. Okay, what I mean is, sorry, I'm not explaining myself very well. If it's not about fear, yes, how do you convince young people they need to understand risk?
It's definitely about opportunities and not about fear. You just mentioned social media. Social media for us is boon and bane, so to say. On the one hand, it's the greatest source of misinformation, and one of the most asked questions that we get in our financial life pack is about crypto, because everyone thinks crypto makes you rich in no time. And this is, so to say, a clear message that they don't understand the concept of risk. And we simply try to explain them what does it mean, and in our life pack, and then also through social media, we have a character called Dr. Money. And he is basically
very German, two doctors.
Very German, very Austrian. It's all about titles, and he's a double academic, so to say. And he's young, and he addresses basically those kind of misinformation in 30 to 60 second snippets, video snippets, very funnily made, where it talks about these issues that you can't get rich in 48 hours or in no time without being at the risk of losing everything that you put into.
And another point that was made in our first panel was also in this world of influencers, and I want to talk about the role of influencers later on. People think, well, that's how I get rich now. I don't need to know all this stuff. I just go online, I become an influencer, and it's done. So I don't need to care. Maria, in terms of, because the question and the point Miles was making about, it's about attitudes, it's about behaviors, it's not just about the skills. And I think that's something that both Noémie and Philippe are pointing to. What do you think the key is there to addressing those attitudinal questions as much as then, and we'll come on to the education sector and the role of schools later?
I think again the key is identification. So I agree. We don't have to speak only about risk, but about opportunities. But we have to be very concrete, I think. So children and students have to feel what happens when you do something, have to try something and learn by doing. And so they may have the possibility to identify themselves with characters, maybe also gaming, but then learning what happens if you behave in a certain way. And also history can help a lot, because for example, if you tell what happens in the past and you tell the story with engaging modes, then maybe they do not experience it now, but they can feel what the people that, for example, with a high inflation level in Germany, okay, what all the people lost a lot of money. So if you make a story about this and you make a film, a very small video on this, then they can be compassionate with the people that lost their money, and they feel, oh, it could happen also these days, or maybe it does not happen because now we have different setup, different authorities, central banks that care that it does not happen, but they start to understand what can happen and why it does not happen. But of course, you need, as I said before, to make them make a step back and listen a bit.
Thank you, Marcel. From your perspective, I just want to come back to this question of the role of social media, both as an opportunity, both as a vehicle to get messages out, to get young people engaged, as well as what we tend to focus on, which is the risks that the online world poses. How do you see that balance, and are we doing enough, do you think, to take advantage of what social media can help us with?
Well, very clearly not. So I'm very much in favor of looking at social media as both an opportunity and, yeah, you know, and we need to address the risks as well. You know that we did this also in the RIS proposal with provisions that strengthen the liability of financial institutions for what influencers are doing. But I think we should also invest more in using the opportunities of social media and be more present in the social media with the right messages on opportunities and risks of capital markets.
We had a question, sorry to interrupt, but we had a question, two questions in the first panel about influencers. One saying, do we need more regulation? Should they have to be authorized? And another saying, can we do more to harness them as communicators of good message? I just wonder where you stand on the question of if there, I mean, I was questioning whether it was even possible to regulate in this space.
So, I mean, the possibilities are, well, we can regulate this space. We're doing this, but we do not want to regulate influencers out. I don't think that that's a realistic opportunity. I think a realistic possibility. I think what we need to do is we should look at more at the upside. How can also influencers pass the right messages, and here I'm wondering whether we're doing enough. My impression is that we're not, and again, this is not something that is for public authorities only, but I think here it's also the financial industry that has to that can do more to protect its reputation. And increase the interest and the appetite for the right investments.
Yeah.
What I very strongly agree with is that that young people learn from experience. So I think it's not like telling them you should watch out when you invest in crypto. I don't think that actually works. I'm a parent myself, and we might all be, so this will not work, but experience may work. So there is certainly, and that is something that came out when Commissioner McGuinness discussed with experts and also with kids from school recently. What came out was that there is an interest to experiment with the capital markets, and there is the possibility of developing games that allow you to try out investing in whatever in a protected environment and see what happens. And here, I mean, the opportunities, the possibilities are essentially unlimited. You know, you can design those games in a way that they pass on the right messages.
Indeed, and we saw an example of that in our video about the European Stock Market Learning Initiative. Just in terms of what tools to use, because in the first panel, we had somebody who said, don't use books. It's not about books. Books, very old. And also, don't make this an additional burden on children's education. So it's all about digital tools. It's all about, we talked there about learning by doing, and say we've had some examples of that already. Maria, what for you, and same question to all of you, what tools are most effective? Is it these sort of competitions, this game, turning it into a game where you learn from doing it? Is it apps? And would you rule out, I mean, we had a lot of conversation about the role of the education sector itself, and not just about, when we talk about growing enthusiasm, can we have growing enthusiasm among teachers and among educators for including this in the curriculum? But what sort of tools really work and what don't? Same question to the three of you. Maria first.
I think it should be a mix of everything. I will not rule out any means, not even books, because it should be, I mean, apps, or it should be a mix of different instruments that people can choose what they like best. I mean, there are still children that like very much books, and even normal books, not iPads. And for example, teachers in school continue to prefer having books when we go to teacher, because we apply a method of educating teachers, and then the teachers pass it to students. So when we go to teachers to make them more aware of all this financial topic, and to be able, and to in order to make them more able to pass it to their students, and we say we don't have books, for example, say no, we would like to have books. So we provide them with everything, apps, books, videos, and all different means. And I think it's better to not to rule out any of this.
That's a very good point about how you engage the teachers. If you don't give them the tools that they feel comfortable using, then maybe they won't. I will come back later on, but Noemi.
I would say that's. I also would like just to give an example of National Competent Authority, like, which has launched quite a good initiative. I would say similar to what has been mentioned by Maria or Philip, that clearly they launched a video, for example, it was like 15-second video, and it was about like telling how you can become rich quickly. That's what like the main thing. And of course, then it was like about like kind of a teaser, the same way as scammers are doing. And it was posted on Instagram, TikTok. And at the end, what happened at the end of the video, you can discover that, of course, it's not the reality, it's not how it works. And indeed, it's quite aligned with what's mentioned, what has been mentioned by Maria, learn by doing. So you realize by being trapped in a way that it's not the reality sometimes, and you have to be very careful about the information you can find on social media as well. So I would say the tools are very important, and clearly the communication tools, but also more involvement of the teachers. So we see national competent authorities partnering with teachers. As mentioned at the very beginning, it's about also government partnering with national competent authorities, the supervisory authorities, to make sure that they have the right tool at school. But it's also about making fun and entertaining for the youth, and definitely it could be through gamification. So not only like participating to games, like, you know, in a group, but it's also about like creating online games, I would say, that they can take part. And so it's kind of gamification of like in general and broader terms that you can find on websites. And last point as well is making sure also that they have in mind also social media, and then you communicate quickly with them. And that's a bit the difficulty that we face, I would say, national competent authorities sometimes be very specific, but then attract them at the same time. So that I would say that the main tools that we can see, but definitely social media play an important role.
Thank you. And Philip, for you, I don't know, Dr. Money is just a video or comes in different guises. What sort of tools do you think are most effective?
Dr. Money is a real person. It's
a real
one
person.
It's a real person. He's working with me. He is basically the head of my communications department. But he's young and he's enthusiastic. No, that's his alter ego. But as Maria, we're using a blended learning approach. So we have all basically we have a digital portfolio where we work together with the Education Alliance Finland, which tested all our materials and helped us so strategically in setting up this portfolio. Mostly there are challenges where you in a very, very gamified and playful way are taught in certain topics, be it the capital market, pension provision, debt avoidance, all kinds of topics. But we have in our financial life pack itself, we have educators. The kids are going through the exhibition with wallets, so it's analog, digital, and the stations as well. And the kids and young people are getting feedback constantly. And we have one station, then I close it. It's called the reality check, where they are divided into teams, 3 bikes. There's one guy on the bike, and the rest are so to say, and then you have a group of peers helping the guy solving questions. And if he answers the questions right, it's like in life, life gets easier. But the more they do wrong, the cycling gets more and more and more difficult. As a kind of analogy that if you do your wrong decisions, then it's getting harder. So this is that you feel when you are on the wrong path.
Which links that issue of attitudes and behaviours, and very much also Noemi's point about have fun. Marcel, let's come, if we might, and I will come out to you all then shortly, about the new framework. We heard Miles Lasby has presented it to us. We know broadly what it contains. He stressed very much this is a guide. It builds on the adult framework, which was published January 2022. And I was struck by something Maria said earlier when she said, and it's challenging even with adults. So the degree to which this is a different approach, obviously this focuses more on the education sector, but how do you see the role and the implementation challenge ahead?
Yeah. The implementation challenge is, I think this has come out.
Your button may be down again. I should leave it up because that's fine. Yep.
So the implementation challenge is huge. I think this has come out here already, and different initiatives have been taken in different member states. At the EU level, what we can do is we have the convening power. We can bring the actors together. We do not have the regulatory power, but we can bring actors together. We can encourage mutual learning. We can look together at good practices, and Italy is one of the most active countries in that area. So others can see what others are everyone can see what everyone is doing, and there is a learning opportunity, but we cannot force the actors to pick up on the good examples. So that is where we depend on the insight of everyone, that what we need to do in the area of financial education is necessary. So that's where we depend on, if you like, the goodwill of the different stakeholders, but we can work on improving the understanding of the issues, and also improve the understanding of the industry, that it is ultimately in the interest of the industry as well, that their customers are well informed, because trust is one of the big obstacles to.
So Maria, I'll come back to you in a minute, but Philip, if I could pick up with you first of all, because Peter Simon said right at the beginning, this is part of our DNA. We see it as very much part for savings and retail banks. How helpful do you think this framework can be? How do you see the way forward for the framework?
I mean, we have been established before such a framework existed, but I think it's an excellent guidance. We were involved in the framework for the grown-ups.
Yeah.
And it basically followed the route of this first framework. And yeah, for me, it's an excellent guidance. And sometimes we look it up and see where could we do things a little bit better.
So you've already been using the adult framework. Yeah. Maria, I know the Banca d'Italia has launched a number of initiatives and under this framework. What have we learned from implementing the adult framework? So far, it's only a year in or so, 18 months in. And how do you see the role of this framework? How can we use it best?
Yes, it's very important to have a framework, because it gives, it's sharing, okay, it's knowledge sharing in the end. So if you have a framework, which is the result of a work together, where many people identified what are the topics that are more important for young people or for adults, and so you have this kind of guide that can help you in developing concrete initiatives. Of course.
And how have you used the adult one so far? Because am I right in saying you have already?
Yes, because we build our initiatives and also the material that we use on the different competences that are in the framework. So we start, for example, with the Committee for Financial Education. We also tried to put the guidelines in the curricula of the different topics in school. For example, this was very concrete, because if you know what is important for the people to know from a financial literacy point of view, then you can also try to combine these knowledges with other knowledges that are important, for example, and they are taught in school. So it's essential to have this guide, because it's much easier than to develop actual programs. And I wanted just to say, to go back to what Philip said before, because it's very important in my view, because of course the guidelines give us the framework, but then you have to develop the material. And as I said before, I think it's a good idea to develop different tools and different kind of materials, but it's very important what Philip said before, to use not only your knowledge, and so to stay in, I work in a central bank and we know many things, but also to work with, but maybe we are not so good in communicating. So we are not psychologists, we are not pedagogists, okay? So when we develop the material within the framework also about money, payment instruments, we speak a lot and work a lot with pedagogists or with psychologists to develop tools that are more effective. This is a point that it's very, very important.
And also, we were talking in the last panel about that broader context of media literacy generally social media literacy particularly. So when you're trying to teach people what information is good information online, what is not, the role of influencers, whether you should listen to them or not, that's part of a broader discussion about how our young people see any information. So joined up thinking with expertise there. But Noemi, from your perspective, as we look to take this framework and use it, and you talked about those national competent authorities, how important can this framework be, and how can we support them to make best use of it?
So clearly the national competent authorities are supportive because they were the one also partnering with the OECD, the European Commission to build, but indeed that should be done at national level. How is it implemented? So it's a European approach, but then the key component is to adapt the messages also to the national consumers. And that's what the national competent authorities will do, of course, when using those tools to tailor them to the consumers, basically. And I would say it's something that we need, of course, to see in the long term, but the adult framework was already there. I think it was a good experience already. So now extending it to youth will be definitely a positive component of any future financial education initiatives from the national competent authorities. There's one point, if I may, just in line also with what has been mentioned about the tools. The best way to communicate is one element or two elements which are key. I think it's the searchability also on internet as well, because of course it's if you launch very good initiative, but considering that today the youth are looking at many information on social media, on internet, then it's very important to be able to find this information very quickly on the internet. And the other element is the credibility, because we see a lot of information accessible, but at the end there's a lot of misinformation. Many actors providing a lot of information about crypto assets, for example. We talked about the influencers, and then having the credibility of the information. And I would say here, the national competent authorities play an important role here to also validate some messages or to warn the consumers. So we just wanted to spread that because it's an important.
And I'd like to squeeze in, if I can, when I've been out to the audience talking about how everybody plays that role together, how you really work together. But that crucial question of tailoring, I think it was one of the points Miles made very clearly in his presentation about the content and the structure all needs to be tailored to the local context, to what works in particular educational settings, which are different, cultural settings, and so on. But are there any questions or comments, Christine? I think you wanted to come back on the books issue. I'll come back if I have time, but let me come right to the back of the room, and please do introduce yourself and please be brief. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you for conversation. My name is Hümeyra. I am working as a data analyst intern here. I want to ask, do you have any new definition when you are defining the intrinsic value of money, or specifically for currency? Because especially after blockchain technology, we know that narratives are getting more important, and even non-tangible funds and cryptocurrencies are getting more attention. So are you still binding when you are defining the intrinsic value of money for its three basic functions, or do you have any framework?
Can anyone help us with that one? Maria.
Okay. I mean, money has, what we try to teach, and is the difference from money and all the other things that are not money, like crypto assets. And not just because of the three functions of money, because we know that money not always has all three functions, even if it's the money that we use today has the three functions. Okay, but in the past, for example, there was money that had just one or two of these functions. But the important is that there is, a convertibility and a trust in this money, and acceptability. This is the key. I accept money from you, even if it is digital and it's not something that has a real value, because I know that it is accepted by other people. And this is the key, why I accept money. And this is not true for crypto assets, because you have no guarantee that other people are going to accept them as you accept it today.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I wanted to come back on this issue of, yeah, sorry, do you want to add something?
Yes, yes, because it's very funny, just an experience, because I often speak about crypto assets to students, and it's very funny because they always start saying that they gather all possible information on the internet, they know everything, they are very aware of the risks, they know how to take care of the risks, and so they know everything about DLT and everything, and that's always the start when I give them the word. And then I tell them, do you know that there is no guarantee that other people will accept it, and if nobody is going to accept it, you will lose all the money that you have. And normally they say, oh no, this is something I didn't know. And so this is what I said before, we take a step back and we start to reason together about the real value of the money, which is not something that has a real value, but has trust.
Philip, you wanted to come in?
No, just an anecdote. A year ago, a 70-year-old told me, when it comes to crypto, there are either Lambos or foodies. And it basically describes the willingness of taking risks. If you take a lot of risk, you will get rich and you will be able to drive a Lamborghini. And if you take no risks and you're just a building saver or whatever, you will become a food stamp collector. That's the foodie. And this is how much they know about risk.
Absolutely. I want to come to a point, and I saw a question flash up on the screen and then disappear, but it was about teachers and targeting teachers in these programs. And I bring it up as part of the conversation about who needs to do what and how we build this coalition, because when I asked the first panel for their key priority now, the real emphasis was on bringing in the education sector. There was a sense that people, the industry is doing its thing, banks are doing their thing, the commission, the policymakers are doing their thing. It was felt that the hardest nut to crack, I'm using that English expression again, was the education sector itself and teachers. We've heard a lot about teaching the teachers as well. But what for you is the key to really making sure, and Marcel, I think you started by saying, you know, we have to have all stakeholders involved. How do you see that? And you talked about your convening power. So broad question, how do we make sure that everyone works together effectively on this? And I know teaching is not part of the EU's competence, but any thoughts on how we bring the education sector in? Because that seemed to be the biggest challenge identified by our first panel. Quick answers, if you would. Marcel first.
I mean, we
just push it up. I can leave it on. It's fine. There.
I think everybody agrees that we have to bring in the school. We have to bring in the schools. You know, I mean, multi-channel. I would totally agree with, but you know, schools are at the heart of the challenge, and here I think we need the national level to work on this. Brussels is too far away from what is happening in the school, what is happening in the classroom. This has to be done by those who are running the education system in the member states. There's no other way, and we should not fool ourselves in believing that you know, the silver bullet comes from Brussels.
Maria?
I agree. School, we said it also this morning in the first panel. School is the way, I think. And
also the hardest challenge, do you think? Do you
in
agree
Italy,
with that?
we have, right now, legislative proposal to make the teaching of financial education compulsory in school within civic education. And we really hope that this proposal will go all the way, and it will be compulsory starting from next year. And I think this is a big jump forward. It's a long-term project, of course, because you start with the legislative requirement, and then you have to teach the teacher. You have to start. You have to find a balance. Also, this morning was mentioned between the different topics that you teach at school, because there are many topics that are very important, and so you have to squeeze financial education between all the others.
But as Roland said, stop treating it as a nice to have, because we've heard how important it is. This is an audience that knows. Philip, Caroline also talked in the first session about teaching the teachers and going into schools, or having teachers come to you as an industry. What can we do to, and obviously the context is different for member states. How do you see getting the education sector more on board?
Yeah, first of all, there's no systemic change without this important topic being taught at school. That's clear. Whatever we do, whatever we design as a new part of our portfolio, we have the teachers in mind. We don't think of the young people, we think of the teachers, because they are in the end the ones that will have to use it. It has to be practical for them. It has to be easy, understandable for them. And if it is so, if it creates very little work for them, then they will use it.
Make it easy, yeah.
Yeah, and the same is also because, I mean, in the end, the teacher brings the children to what we are doing, or the students. So he is always in the center of, or she is always in the center of our attention.
So just to read out that question, because I now have it in front of me, from Fatima Zara Aziz from Morocco, saying teachers themselves should be considered a target of these programs because their awareness and understanding of related subjects makes them more comfortable in dealing with children in the best possible way. Very useful comment there. Thank you, Fatima. Noemi, your thoughts on this bringing everyone together, and if you have a thought on how we can engage more with teachers.
So clearly, it's one of the key components. It's very important component, as mentioned at the beginning as well. Is that it's what we see as an increasing trend, if I may use this word, like national competent authorities are more and more partnering with teachers about like to identify their needs, about the training program, also for the children, but also for the teachers. Definitely, that's the two angles, like how to train the teachers, but how also to provide the right material to the teachers in order for them to also provide this knowledge to the different children and youth.
Which brings us back to that point we've been making. It's not just the tools for reaching the children directly. It's tools teachers can relate to play their role as conduits. We are almost out of time, but I want to, Miles ended his presentation with key next steps as far as the framework goes. I want to broaden this out, and same question I asked our first panel, accepting this is complex, accepting there is no one silver bullet for each of you. And I'll start with Noemi this time and go along the line. If you had to identify a key next step, a top priority to meet the challenge we've been discussing and deliver the results we should be seeing, but we're not, what for each of you is the key next step? 1 minute each. Noemi.
As mentioned, unfortunately, I cannot provide like very key next step as European Banking Authority because we are coordinating national competent authorities. However, in 2024, digitalization and crypto assets financial education aspect will be very important. Currently, we focus very much on inflation and the rise of interest rate and sustainable finance, so not so much like use, but then for 2024, there will be more discussion and exchange of knowledge, lessons learned from national competent authorities for 2024.
Thank you so much. Philip.
On the national perspective, as we said, we have to bring this topic into the schools, into the school curricula, so it has to be taught there to really change something and we also should overcome whatever ideological barriers there still are, and it seems that there are still a lot of barriers. And on an EU level, I would say that we should, or the EU should create more funds to support scalable projects.
Thank you very much, Maria.
The next step for us is for sure having financial education as compulsory in school curricula, and I hope from next year, and it will allow us, I think, in the long run to make a really jump forward.
It'll be interesting to hear how much of a difference it makes and what others can learn from that. Marcel, you have the last word.
In addition to the implementation of the frameworks that we already discussed, for us the next step is to get the provisions on financial education that are in the retail investment strategy, to get them adopted by the Council and the European Parliament, because that would be a strong commitment of the European institutions, but also the member states, to giving more visibility and more importance to financial education. And that is something that we can then, that hopefully will create a momentum that we can then build on to work on the more concrete, on the more concrete issues.
And on that note, will you thank me in joining our panel very much indeed for a great discussion. Thank you so much to all of you.